Analyzing and interpreting performance data, notable trends. Performance trends should be identified for all performance indicators. This means academic achievement, academic growth gaps, and post-secondary and workforce readiness. In developing trend statements, planning teams should review 3 to 5 years of performance data. They should consider measures and metrics beyond those that are included in the School Performance Framework Report. For example, they need to consider grade level results and K-3 literacy assessment results. They should consider the required state data, but also any available local data, including interim assessment results like NWEA, STAR, or Acuity. Trends should describe both positive and negative performance patterns. Trends must be included for any performance indicator or sub-indicator area where the school did not at least meet state and federal performance expectations. When they are included in the UIP, each trend statement should include the following pieces of information: measure or metric, content area, which students, grade levels or disaggregated groups, direction, stable, increasing or decreasing, amount, percentages, percentiles, rates, or scores, time period in years, and what makes a notable trend or reference a comparison point. See these example trend statements. How do we describe notable trends? It involves these steps. The first one is determine what metrics will be considered and what questions will guide analysis or your path through relevant performance data. Developing a path through the data should occur before teams come together to identify notable trends. This includes determining what data reports will be used, in what order, and what questions will guide the analysis. The second step involves planning teams looking at the questions that will guide their analysis and making predictions about what they see in the reports or views of their actual performance. For example, what percentage of our students do we predict will score proficient or better on the state math assessment? The main purpose of this stage is to activate and engage participants in discussion about data. We do that by communicating our expectations about the data we are about to see. This allows planning team members to access our prior learning that will help us better understand the data. We also share our own biases and frames of reference when we make predictions. This helps us better understand our peers in this discussion and to learn from one another. As we dig a little deeper, we also try to make explicit the assumptions that underlie our predictions. Peter Singe explains that we should do this not to lay our assumptions aside, but rather to give them considerable weight and try to understand where they come from. This slide shows a flip chart where a planning team captured some predictions under the P column and the associated assumptions in column A that were behind each prediction. Using a flip chart so that everyone in the conversation can see the predictions is a key strategy for ensuring the focus is the data and not the person. To make predictions, the group will need to select a recorder, and for that recorder to create a T-chart depicted here. Put predictions on one side and assumptions on the other side of the T-chart. Then the recorder can capture predictions on the left side of the chart and the assumptions on the right. Asking why of each person after they share a prediction may help them generate assumptions. The questions that were generated to guide data analysis for each metric are the same questions that should be used when making predictions. Predictions can simply be answers to those questions. For example, what percent of our K-3 students will be identified as having a significant reading deficiency? What is our graduation rate for English language learners? It is best to predict before reviewing data reports at all, but a predictive discussion can still happen even if the team has already seen some of the data. The next 3 steps in identifying notable trends actually can happen simultaneously. These include interacting with data of user reports that include at least the last 3 years of data. Look for things that pop out with a focus on patterns over time, and then listing positive and negative facts about the performance data. There are some key ideas to keep in mind as teams move into identifying significant trends. Critical to exploring and analyzing data is being willing to hang out in uncertainty. During this step, it will be important to refrain from trying to explain what the data means. Rather, make observations about the data. This will require your team to do some analysis, which is really looking for patterns in the data, identifying the things that pop out as you look at the data. During this phase, it might be helpful to identify a member of your team to be the because monitor. If anyone starts to explain why the data looks a certain way, rather than making fact statements about the data, the because monitor should let them know that they are getting off track. This slide includes some examples of visual representations of data that planning teams have created to support their analysis. There are a variety of strategies for interacting with performance data. Regardless of the form of the data report, teams can highlight or color code the data. The SPF or DPF reports are color-coded to indicate ratings of different metrics. These are based on cut points described in page 3 and 4 of the SPF, the scoring rubrics. These rubrics are helpful guides for schools and district planning teams as they dig into their own data. Teams need to agree on an approach for interacting with their data. Part of the approach should include either viewing or creating a visual representation of the data, or charts or graphs. The steps here may be helpful guides for planning teams as they capture their observations. Folks should 1. Consider the questions that were developed in advance to guide the analysis. 2. Identify things that pop out. Note patterns over time, usually 3 to 5 years. 3. Include both strengths and challenges. And 4. Capture observations about the performance data on a flip chart. Once the team has had a chance to capture all of their observations, then it is time for them to determine which trends are notable and which require additional analysis. How do we determine if the trends we have identified are notable and should be included in the UIP? The UIP Handbook, page 14, provides guidance on what makes a trend notable. Determining if trends are notable likely means comparing school performance to something, such as a comparison point. How did our performance compare to a specific expectation or criterion? How did our performance compare to others, groups of students within the school, district, or state? It may be important to use CSAP or TCAP historical trends as a reference to determine if trends in percent proficient and advanced are notable. In this case, the question would be, did our trend over the same time period deviate from the state trend? If so, by how much? The final step is to write our observations that we've determined as notable as actual trend statements. Trend statements include all of the components listed here. When we put these components together, we get a statement like this one. The percent of 4th grade students who scored proficient or advanced on math, CSAP, TCAP declined from 70% to 55% to 48% between 2012 and 2014, dropping well below the minimum state expectation of 71%. What made this trend notable was that it was well below the minimum state expectation. Here are some more examples of notable trends. The part of the trend that made it notable is underlined in each case. Once the planning team has identified notable trends, those trends, both positive and negative, should be captured in the UIP Data Analysis Worksheet. This is part of the UIP template and is organized by performance indicator. A similar resource is included in the UIP online tool. Trends also need to be described in the school's data narrative. This includes a description of the data the planning team reviewed to identify notable trends, the process in which the team engaged to analyze the school's data and identify notable trends, and the results of the analysis. Which trends were identified as notable and why?